Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I'm so happy to be with you again today as we consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I'm talking about what panic really is. I kind of want to debunk some of the myths and see if we can't get down to the truth here a little bit about panic. And this is all part of, I was reviewing a lot of my notes, and these last few episodes have been more about back to basics, because I realize there's a lot of people listening that are, very much in the beginning stages of anxiety and understanding it. So I know there's something in here for everyone, and we can all do well with a little bit of review. So hang in here with me as we talk about what panic really is. When we think about panic, we really think about what is a panic attack, right? That's the terminology, a panic attack. And I know I use anxiety/panic a lot because what I'm trying to say here when I'm using the word anxiety, I'm not talking about just having an anxious moment or an anxious spell, so to speak. I'm talking about those of us who have in the past or who are now having so much anxiety that we are leaning toward panic and panic attacks, which really can debilitate us if we don't learn how to deal with anxiety and stress, which we've talked about in a couple of earlier episodes. But being able to stay away from panic, staying away from falling down that wormhole that I use the term of, that place where you go down and you are in the cycle, and it takes a lot of energy and effort to get out of. So if we can stay away from that, we can manage our lives and have a lot more peace and calm. So what is a panic attack? It's a sudden onset of intense fear or discomfort with physical and mental symptoms. And now, what are those symptoms? Well, there's a lot of them, but I'll go through a few of them here. It can be the racing heart, sweating, trembling, shortness of breath, feelings of choking or lump in the throat, chest pain, nausea, dizziness, chills, hot flashes, shaking, fear of losing control or going crazy. That's a big one. Fear of dying, depersonalization, or derealization. Some of those things deserve their own whole episodes, but you got the general idea of what I'm talking about when I am talking about a panic attack. Some of you listening may have never experienced a panic attack, and that's awesome, but you have had such chronic anxiety and chronic stress that you are here listening and trying to find your way through it so you don't have to go into the panic. So, of course, what is it that's causing a panic attack? What would trigger a panic attack? We could look at a couple of different things. The first would be some biological factors, and that would be an adrenaline surge. That's coming from inside you. Your fight or flight response has been activated, and your body is letting out adrenaline and cortisol, and those are stress hormones that are just doing what they are there to do. The body got the signal that something is very wrong. We're in fight or flight, and we're going to let out these stress hormones. So that's the biological factors. What about psychological triggers? Could be stress, could be trauma, phobias, catastrophic thinking, and a lot of other kinds of thinking. But the catastrophic thinking kind of says it all. We think our way into panic quite often, and that's actually some good news, because if you can think yourself in, you can think yourself out. I know that for a fact. Now, before I go off on a tangent there are also lifestyle factors. Stay with me here. Caffeine, alcohol, lack of sleep, chronic stress are the big ones. So see where you're at with those things. I've talked about caffeine, alcohol, sleep in other episodes, and we've recently covered stress in the last couple of shows. So see where you're at with those things. Please don't delay in getting rid of caffeine and alcohol if you can. Those are very much within your control. Lack of sleep here or there, maybe some people can make changes. I want you to do the best you can, of course. And chronic stress, again, there are a lot of environmental things that are going to be causing you lack of sleep or chronic stress. But that caffeine and alcohol, totally within your control. I want you to check and see where you're at with those, because the way that it has been reported to me over the years by people who refused to give up their caffeine, I get it. I'm not here to tell clients what to do. I just show them the way that can work for them. And then they finally, at some point after not seeing me anymore, give up the caffeine and had the heart to actually send me an email and say, I can't believe how much of a difference that made. It really changed everything. I want you to pay attention to that. Giving up caffeine can make a world of difference for you. Alcohol too, but that's a whole nother story. So, what else do we have here for causes and triggers? It could be that you already have an underlying anxiety disorder. Maybe you have a panic disorder. Maybe you have been dealing with anxiety for so long that now you're diagnosed with some sort of anxiety disorder or social anxiety or PTSD. Those underlying disorders can be a trigger, and they are adding to the way that you can fall into having a panic attack. So here's an example. You could be having stress at work. You could be starting to date new people and you feel pressure there. You could have significant life events that are related to your personal experiences. These are things that can really begin to put us in a place of overwhelming stress and pressure and cause us to have a panic attack. And you know what happens is we have so much stress, it's building, and then one little thing happens. Let's use something that should be fun, dating. It should be fun. One little thing about dating, an email or a text comes, and it just is that last straw on the camel's back, boom, and you're off and running and having a panic attack. But it was the accumulation of all of these stresses, right? Put them all together, and then that last straw was the trigger. It just can happen like that. So it's not always the thing that we think it is. So then you become afraid of dating. This is what happens. So we go down the wormhole. We don't want to go out of the house. We don't want to date. We don't want to do texting anymore because I had a panic attack after I read that text. That's not how it works. I want you to be able to loosen up a little bit around the circumstances, because it's often a lot of stress that has been building prior to that. Now, let's look at some physical and emotional impacts of these panic attacks. We can have hyperventilation, we can have muscle tension and exhaustion after the attack. It can take time for you to come back down again. Your breathing may be off. Your muscles may be tense for quite a while, and you may be exhausted. You could also have emotional aftermath, such as fear of future attacks. This is the thing I'm always trying to guide you away from. Do not be afraid of future attacks. We can deal with them, because we don't want to get into emotional behaviors of avoidance and diminished confidence. We want to remember we don't have to fear future attacks of panic. Now, it can be mistaken. A panic attack, we can be thinking that we're having a serious medical issue. and in particular, a heart attack, because often our heart is very involved with our stress levels, and it can be beating hard. We can be feeling pain in the chest. Many people have such clenched down chests that they have actual pain from the muscles. The muscles are in pain. So that can be misinterpreted, right? We think we're having a physical issue such as a heart attack or other serious medical issue, and it is actually a panic attack. Many people end up in the ER being sent home saying you were having a panic attack. So one of the things that I talk a lot about, and you just heard me say it, to not fear another panic attack, because the perpetuating panic is what can keep people in that cycle for years. The fear of the panic attack itself is anticipatory anxiety. Fear of the symptoms intensifies the attack. If you start having a panic attack and you are well enough equipped to be able to be cool with it and just say, oh, baby, this is a panic attack, this could happen. You could handle it. But if you have the fear of the symptoms and you go, oh my God, no, here we go. Oh my God, that will intensify the panic attack. We play a big role in how far these go. And that's good news because we can turn that around. We can also end up in the fear of the fear cycle. How fearing the panic attack becomes a loop that just continually sustains itself, because we have fear, then we have an adrenaline release, and then we have more fear from the adrenaline release, and then we have more adrenaline release. It goes on and on. And again, it's a cycle that can be broken. So what we want is to be cool with it. We want to go to this place called neutral, because focus on safety and control, like attempts to control or avoid the sensation of a panic attack, often will actually fuel the panic attack. You don't have to get to safety and you don't have to control it. You have to go to neutral. You have to relax your muscles. You have to slow down your exhale and ride it out. You want to pay attention of what role you are playing in the perpetuation of the fear and panic attack. So there are some other things that happen during a panic attack, and that would be catastrophic thinking. We could be misinterpreting benign symptoms as dangerous, such as the feeling that you get when you're in a panic attack and you think, oh my God, can you tell that was my favorite fear talk, was, oh my God, here we go again. I was so afraid. And I remember thinking this one, oh my God, I'm going to faint. Oh my God, I can't breathe. Oh my God, here we go again. This catastrophic thinking is misinterpreting the symptom of the panic attack. Yeah, you feel dizzy or woozy and you feel like you can't breathe, but if you know you're having a panic attack, just know that's the feelings that come. You're not going to faint and you can breathe. No one dies from these. You can hear me say that again. No one dies from the panic attack. But we can also get ourselves into hypervigilance to the bodily sensations. We can become really heightened in our awareness of our bodily changes. And this can begin a whole other cycle of anxiety, of worrying about every bodily sensation that you are feeling. We can also have something that's like a mental overload. We can have racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, feelings of being disconnected from reality. Again, very common. So when you feel it, don't think this is the end. You're falling off the edge of reality. No, this happens in a panic attack. You feel disconnected from reality or from yourself. And I've addressed this in other episodes, so I don't want to go off too far on that. So let's talk about what panic attacks are not. Number one, they're not dangerous. Discomfort is not dangerous, and panic attacks are the ultimate in discomfort. Despite feeling terrifying, they are not life-threatening. Also, panic attacks are not a sign of a mental breakdown. They are simply a part of an anxious response, not a sign of losing control. Even though you feel like you're losing control, you are not. It is not a sign of a mental breakdown. Understanding the fight or flight response is important. You're going to have an adrenaline surge that is designed to protect, but it is misunderstood as dangerous. When you get that adrenaline surge, I used to fear it too. I get it. But once you understand it, you can understand my body's trying to protect me, and it is not dangerous. It's preparing the body for survival in the face of perceived threats. You are going to be pumped up to take care of business. But we have a misperception of it. Panic attacks do feel like a true emergency, but they are not. So that's why it's so important to hear this information over and over and over, so that at some point, when you are falling into a panic attack, you can remember these things. Your body is just protecting you and preparing you for survival in the face of a perceived threat. And you look around, you are not in a threatening situation. Good. Go to neutral. Ride it out. You can't stop it. You can't turn it around. There's no U-turn happening. You have to just ride it out. It will end. So quickly here, let's talk about some coping mechanisms and how you can keep getting through these. Breathing exercises are important. Grounding techniques are important. Relaxing your muscles. Distraction can be very helpful during a panic attack. I don't like distraction for a long-term cure, but when you are in a panic attack, if you can distract yourself from some of these physical sensations that are happening, use it. That's fine. You can also use mindfulness and acceptance over the long term. As you learn mindfulness and acceptance, you will be able to observe the sensations that are happening without judging them, without fearing them, and you can go to neutral and ride out the wave of anxiety. So I have just a few last things here. I want to talk about a couple of myths about panic attacks. The first myth is that you can pass out during a panic attack. No. The second myth is panic attacks cause permanent damage. No, not true. Third one, panic attacks can last for hours. Now, that's not true either. But the feeling of anxiety, like I said earlier, you may feel exhausted afterwards and your breathing may still be off, but panic peaks and subsides. It comes and it goes. And the more you can ride it and not add more fuel to the fire with more fear and adrenaline and more fear, the more quickly it will subside. Finally, life after panic attacks. I want you to know that you can get through these, you can clear anxiety and panic out of your life, and you can become very resilient. Panic is a learned response, and you can unlearn it through the proper techniques. You can develop coping mechanisms, and you can build resilience and reduce the fear of future attacks. And the next thing you know, you can't remember when you had your last panic attack. I hope that this has been helpful for you, because you can have peace and calm in your life, even though right now it feels like you haven't felt it in a while, or that you are having that lingering thought in the back of your head of when will that panic attack come again. We can work our way out of that thought too. That's just another anxious thought. And when you have learned how to come to neutral, when you are using mindfulness and breathing and doing these things on a regular basis, you will no longer be fearing the anxiety, no longer fearing the symptoms and sensations that arise with either chronic stress or anxiety or panic attacks. If I could find my way out of all of this way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, you can too. I believe in you. And now for today's quote. Panic causes tunnel vision. Calm acceptance of danger allows us to more easily assess the situation and see the options. And that's from Simon Sinek. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.